Hello and welcome to the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition Sell and Service Authorization Enablement. My name is Daniele Gondoni from the Partner Solutions Center, and I will guide you through this session about the transition details focused on the consultant role. This is a follow-up from the previous session about the overview on the transition scenario. And if you have not yet attended it, I suggest to do it so you can have a logical sequence in your learning path. Let's start by having a look to the learning objectives of this session. After finishing this course, you will be able to present and discuss with your customers the details about the approach of migrating or converting to the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition. You will also be able to describe the system conversion process and steps in detail. You will understand the main differences in the execution of a transition project to S4HANA Cloud Private Edition compared to an on-premise project. You will also be able to highlight all the prerequisites and the strategy for a conversion of migration into the private cloud, and drive and execute a conversion and migration project targeting S4HANA Cloud Private Edition. Before we get into the details, let me quickly recap what are the different implementation approaches that you can use in the context of an S4HANA Cloud Private Edition. We have the system conversion, which would also be the focus of this session, with all the details on how you can convert an existing SAP ERP system from your customer into S4HANA Cloud Private Edition directly with a one-step approach. We also have the system copy that we will cover in this session, and in this case you have an existing on-premise S4HANA system that you can transfer into S4HANA Cloud Private Edition with a copy approach using the backup and restore methodology. As possible alternatives, we have the new implementation approach. In this case, we are talking about a clean system that is provisioned in the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition and the possibility to implement that system based on an existing SAP ERP implementation of your customer or based on a net new customer implementation project. And last but not least, we have selective data transition, which typically requires additional evaluation. And let's have a look in the next slides for details about this last approach. To talk about the selective data transition, let's start from the definition. This is an approach that combines some of the characteristics coming from system conversion and new implementation in the same project. This approach allows to combine the flexibility of adapting and changing the business processes while retaining all the historical data that will need to be aligned to the changes done in the processes. We know there are other approaches that we see sometimes in the market and used in projects, and also called selective data transition. But if they don't comply with the full definition presented in this slide, we would rather refer to them as variants of system conversion or new implementation. Now that we have a definition of this particular approach, let me get into the official statement from SAP regarding selective data transition. SAP is offering this approach as part of some services from our consulting or services organization. But at the same time, we know that there are third-party vendors and consulting companies that are offering third-party tools or products that can achieve the same results. Nevertheless, SAP does not certify or validate these products or services for the selective data transition. And we also want to highlight that inconsistencies or issues that might arise with the use of non-SAP tools may not be covered by the SAP support agreement. And this in general may prevent SAP from being able to assist and support customers having this type of issues. Beyond the statement I have here, SAP will not further comment on features, functions, or capabilities of any non-SAP tools in this area, which is why additional evaluations need to take place in case a selective data transition is required. In this section, we will have a detailed look into two of the transition scenarios we have previously seen, And this is the system copy for existing S4HANA customers that would like to move into the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition, and the system conversion approach for existing SAP ERP customers that would like to convert their own system into our Private Edition. Before we get into the details of the transition, let's have a look to some general concepts. The first one is the connection to the S4HANA Cloud. And we know that customers will have over time an MPLS-like type of connection into the S4HANA Cloud. And here, depending on the hyperscaler in use, we have different technologies supporting this. Anyhow, during the setup and during the initial project, most likely this will just be a VPN tunnel. Also, it is really important for you as a partner to understand that we will not provide a direct connection to the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition for you, but we assume that you will use the customer's connection from the customer network, and then leveraging the same VPN tunnel or MPLS type of connection as previously mentioned, you will be able to reach the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition environments for the project activities. The second topic I would like to touch is about the way and the approach that we have prepared for you as a partner in order to be able to drive all the activities for a migration or a conversion project. The S4HANA Cloud has in general some regulations that are in place, and this will prevent you from accessing directly with root access the operating system and the database level. Therefore, we have decided to provide you with a migration server, which is a temporary virtual machine in which you have full access and also root access in order to perform all the related migration project activities. This is a virtual SUSE Linux server that has 128 GB of RAM and 32 virtual CPUs, and this should be enough to allow you to execute a system move or migration with high performance. You will perform all the export tasks on the customer side, so we expect you to copy all the necessary software and tools into this migration server. This includes the Software Provisioning Manager and the Software Update Manager, and the SAP kernel, which needs to be aligned with the kernel version we have and are using on the target system. These details can be aligned and agreed with the operations team before starting the migration activities. The migration server is there to be used during the overall project and to manage the conversion or migration into the different environments you have in the target, including development, quality, and production. You will also need to clean up the migration server between the different executions so that the system is ready to run the next iteration in your conversion or migration project. The migration server at the end of the migration project will be decommissioned, and this will also include some activities by our operations team in order to switch into the final version of the architecture, including the final server hosting the S4HANA system. The migration server is supported and provided with Azure, AWS, Google Cloud Platform hyperscalers, and also for the SAP data center. In case your customer's landscape includes components that need to be migrated beside the ECC or S4HANA that are running, for example, on SAP ASE or the Twiver Java systems, the migration assisted services will be included to assist you as a partner with the migration. Through migration assisted services, you get GUI access to the tools like Software Provisioning Manager instead of the root level access you have on the migration server. The tools will be started by the SAP team after you as a partner have instructed them on how you want the tools to be executed in terms of parameters. Regarding operating system level access, you will only get a so-called jailed restricted access in order for you to be able to read execution logs. In case of any action that needs to be performed outside of your jailed access by means of the root user, you will have to instruct the SAP team for your desired actions to be taken. The SAP team will take care of launching the execution of tools like the Software Update Manager or Software Provisioning Manager or any other requested command on the operating system level. Monitoring service requests initiated by you as a partner, coordinate activities with the SAP server management and database teams, share logs on requests that would be otherwise not accessible, and copy files to locations where the end customer or partner has no access. You as a partner retain, on the other hand, the complete responsibility of the migration, including following up and fixing issues related to the migration itself, and opening support tickets and all change requests as needed, while keeping a close alignment with the SAP team assigned to the customer. Let's now have a look at what migration services are included. There will be an initial kickoff meeting to discuss the migration strategy and go through the plan. You will receive guidance for data transfer and information about the storage location for storing the export, backup files, and the conversion files, ticket-based support during the migration, support with a named contact during production dry run and cutover weekend, and also all the required information that will be shared, including SAP users and read-only operating system level access. The migration services cover one migration or conversion for every non-productive instance, typically development and quality environments, and two migrations or conversions for the productive instance, in order for you to have a dry run before the final cutover. It is worth mentioning again that you as a partner are fully in charge of the migration process and therefore responsible of any required troubleshooting. What is specifically out of the service scope of the migration assisted services is any troubleshooting of issues during the migration, for which the partner can eventually contact SAP application support if deemed necessary, joining any bridge calls and providing 24/7 updates to the customer, and in general, any follow-up with teams in or outside SAP. We can now start our deep dive into the first transition scenario, which is the system conversion. In this case, we are talking about a scenario that allows you a complete conversion of an SAP ERP system into the S4HANA Cloud. And it is a standard scenario that is well covered by tools, guides, and support from the overall SAP approach. A customer should go for this option if they want to bring their complete business processes and also data, including historical ones, into an S4HANA. The process is standardized by SAP and is supported in general with a main tool called Software Update Manager. And this also includes a so-called DB migration option, or DMO, which will take care of the technical phases of the migration, including the database migration. The move into the cloud is made possible by a specific option of the tool, which is called DMO with System Move. And this is part of the Software Update Manager tool and allows a customer to move their system into a different location, which in our case and context is the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition. Before we get into the details of the sequence for system conversion, we want to start looking in the overall strategy for system conversion. We know that in general, there could be multiple strategies and sequences into the project, but we want to give you a starting point for you to create your own variation and your own sequences. In this example, you see on the left-hand side an ERP landscape from the customer, which has development, quality, and production environments. And on the right-hand side, you see the target landscape within the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition with the same three tiers, plus the migration server we have previously described. In this first step, we have the first sandbox conversion typically performed from the production environment. The production environment will have to be then copied into a temporary location that could be either in the customer data center or on an external infrastructure as a service. Once the copy is done, the sandbox environment can be used for the first sandbox conversion through the migration server into the S4HANA quality environment as part of the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition. As a second step of our example, we will now see a second sandbox conversion. The second run is executed still with a new copy of the production environment into the temporary hardware as per before, and then converting this new sandbox into the S4HANA environment in the private edition with the quality tier. In this case, this specific sequence is always possible since all the different sizes of the private edition are including a quality environment with the same size as the production one. We are now at the third step of our conversion example sequence, and here we are doing the third iteration of our sandbox conversion, again starting from a copy of the production environment into the sandbox. From there, we are converting this system through the migration server, targeting now the production environment in the private edition. The production environment will not become productive at the end of this run, but we will use this specific step in order to dry run the final cutover. And for this reason, we strongly recommend you to use exactly the same approach and procedure that will be used during the final cutover. With this step, we are now at the last one, and this is the final conversion cutover directly from the production environment, without using any copy and temporary hardware in between anymore. From there, still using the migration server into the target, we are now again targeting our production environment in the Cloud Private Edition, but this time to then switch the system productively at the end of the conversion process. With this sequence of the 4 steps, we have performed 3 iterations of a sandbox conversion before getting in the final cutover sequence, and this should be enough in the majority of the use cases to correctly test and execute all the steps so that they are validated and ready to be used for a cutover conversion. As previously said, the option, part of the Software Update Manager, used to convert an on-premise system to the Cloud Private Edition is called Database Migration Option with System Move, and allows, between all the possible use cases, a complete move of the SAP system to the cloud using a system conversion. This is a variant compared to a standard system conversion process and requires your basis consultant to be aware and familiar with the specific additional steps that are required. All this information are documented in the standard conversion and software update manager guides. The recommendation is to select the parallel execution mode for all the move into the private edition, although also a serial option is available, as it can save time by executing some of the activities in the source and target system at the same time. With this mode, if the directory where the exported files are written is continuously synchronized with the target environment, then even the export and import processes can run in parallel, with even greater benefits in terms of timing reduction. A conversion consists of different steps, and the first important thing to distinguish for our purpose are the activities performed in the source system, which is the customer current environment, and those on the target system, that is the private edition. The preparation phase starts with a first activity called system requirements, and this particular one requires an alignment between you as a partner and the SAP Cloud Operations team in charge of S4HANA Cloud Private Edition in order to agree on the target system requirements and setup for a specific customer conversion. With this alignment, you will make sure that everything is ready in the private edition to host the converted customer system. The remaining steps, part of the preparation phase, can be executed in the source customer system and do not have dependencies with the target. Switching now to the realization phase, we have the technical steps of the conversion performed by the Software Update Manager tool. This step is organized with a sequence of uptime and then subsequently downtime activities. Right at the beginning of the downtime part, the execution will require a switch to the target environment in Private Edition, where the Software Update Manager tool will continue to run with the subsequent phases. The execution of the Software Update Manager in the target system, as well as in the source system, require direct access to the operating system layer, and this will have to be organized together with the SAP Cloud Operations team that is in charge of the target landscape in the private cloud. We have previously seen that this is done using the migration server. After the technical conversion executed by the Software Update Manager tool is completed, there are several post activities from the cross or application-specific areas that are executed in the converted target system running in the private edition after the switch into the final server and the final application server. These activities only require access to the SAP application layer via the SAP GUI, so they can be performed by you as a partner with no additional or special level of access. In this slide, we now see the detailed technical conversion steps for the previous slide as part of the realization phase, and also the synchronization and coordination between your activities as a partner and the requirement to involve SAP in some of the steps. Let's start from the top, where you as a partner will perform and execute all the required preparation activities in the Software Update Manager for the source system. After this is completed, SAP will have already shared with you the target location for the data transfer into the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition, as well as the guidance for the same transfer, so that you can proceed in copying all the required files from the Software Update Manager folder into the target location. SAP will also provide you with an empty virtual server that you can use for the migration activities, and this is the migration server we have previously seen. With that, you will be able to transfer also all the tools that are required for the conversion activities, like the Software Provisioning Manager, the Software Update Manager, and the SAP kernel. These files will be transferred into the migration server, and then from the same server, you will install a temporary primary application server pointing to the system that you want to convert as part of the pre-installed and pre-provisioned skeleton system into the Cloud Private Edition. After the installation is done, you will be able to execute then the Software Provisioning Manager and continue the system conversion into the target system. Once the Software Update Manager is completed successfully, you will then inform SAP that the technical conversion steps are completed, so that SAP will be able to start the application server that has been pre-installed and is part of the empty system on the specific tier being development, quality, or production. Before SAP can start the server, you have to make sure to stop all the temporary primary application server processes on the migration server, so that there will be only one server and one application server connected to the database. After the final server has been started, you can execute all the post-conversion activities and steps for your conversion, and this can be performed directly on the target environment with now the final application server up and running using the SAP GUI connection. Once this is also completed, you will inform SAP that will then execute post activities that are required before handing over the system to the customer. Those activities include the monitoring tools setup, the backup schedule, and the validation of the target environment, including add-ons. The main steps requiring transfer of data between the customer environment and the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition are summarized in this slide. You have, first of all, the export happening on the on-premise ECC environment into local storage. And after the export is completed, you can then copy the exported data into the migration server in a dedicated storage area. And from there, you will then be able to perform all the import activities required. As part of the DMO with System Move, there is also parallel execution of the export together with the import into the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition. This will be possible in case there is a stable connection between the source and the target environment, and for that you can use the provided rsync script as part of the automated procedure if the source and the target environment are both running on Linux. Otherwise, you will have to synchronize in a different way, for example, using additional tools or scripts, the exported files with the target location, so that the import can run in parallel. For this procedure, it is really important to make sure that the right tools are used and to validate the procedure itself to make sure that this can run in parallel without further issues. Let's now see what are the steps that will need to be performed by the basis consultant working on this conversion by his or her point of view. Step number 1. The consultant will have to prepare the migration server by transferring all the required files and tools, and also by installing a primary application server instance in the migration server for the system which needs to be converted. The required details, like IP address and hostname, as well as passwords, will need to be requested to the SAP Cloud Operations team before starting. In the step number 2, the consultant will now copy all the migration files into the migration server And these are the files that will be exported and generated in the source environment and will be contained in the Software Update Manager folder. In step number 3, subsequently, the Software Update Manager can be started in the migration server, and with this, the conversion process can continue in the target. Step number 4, after finishing the conversion with the Software Update Manager, the first mandatory technical post activities can be already executed in the converted system, but it's really important that all the others will need to be postponed to step number 6. Step number 5. Now the consultant will have to stop the primary application server in the migration server and inform SAP operations so that our team can start the final instance that was initially provisioned. Step number 6. Now with the final instance up and running, all the post-conversion activities required in the S4HANA system can be now performed using the SAP GUI connection. And finally, once all the conversion post activities are done, SAP operations team will be triggered once more to finalize the activities required before the system can be handed over to the customer. After having seen the detailed procedure, let's have a look into some important considerations on the comparison with the standard on-premise conversion. The first part is that all the import or conversion activities in the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition are executed on the provided migration server and not on the final application server itself. The migration server will be reused for each system of the customer landscape, and for each iteration you will decide to execute. And for this, it is important to clean up the migration server after each round of conversion. In total, included in S4HANA Cloud Private Edition, there are up to 5 rounds of the SAP Cloud Post-Processing activity, and they cover a sandbox in case of conversion, development and quality, and twice for the productive environment, one for the dry run and one for the final productive cutover. You can decide as a partner to execute additional rounds of conversion without requesting our SAP Cloud Operations team to perform their post-processing. Post-processing needs to be planned in advance because our team needs to plan the activities, and this can be aligned during the initial kickoff call with our operations team. And this will also require continuous alignment if the plan changes over time. The operations team will perform all the specific post-processing activities after you have completed your conversion activities and before the handover to the customer. After all the details about the system conversion scenario, let's now talk about the other scenario that we have previously seen called system copy. This allows an existing S4HANA customer to migrate their systems to the private edition and leverage the SAP Cloud services and infrastructure as well as the subscription pricing model. To perform this migration, you will use the well-established system copy procedure, which can be performed using the Software Provisioning Manager tool provided by SAP. Given the specific context of this copy and the migration required in between, you will use the backup and restore method that requires a full backup of the SAP HANA database in the source system that needs to take place offline, and then a subsequent restore of the same backup into the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition after the transfer of the backup files into the SAP Cloud. Looking now at the detailed list of steps for the system copy scenario, we see in this slide all the activities that you will perform as a partner together with the activities that will need to be performed by SAP. If we start from the top, we see that you as a partner will execute the required preparation activities in the source environment, and after that, perform a full offline backup of the HANA database. After this is done, SAP will have provided you already with the target location for the transfer of this backup, as well as the guidance for the file transfer itself, so that you can transfer all the backup files on the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition target. Then SAP will move all the provided backup files onto the HANA server. You will then execute the Software Provisioning Manager on the provided migration server so that you can trigger the overall system copy procedure from the software provisioning manager itself, and also restore the database on the HANA database of the system you want to copy. And you will also perform the post steps after this software provisioning manager execution. Once this is done, SAP will then start the SAP application server, which is the final one for this specific environment. And after this is completed, you will be able to execute all the post-system copy steps and activities in the target private edition following the system copy guide. Once this is finished, SAP Cloud Operations team will have to execute their usual post activities before handing over to the customer. And these post activities include setting up monitoring tools, backup, scheduling standard jobs, validation of add-ons, and the content of the system. In this slide, you can see a few more details about the specific steps you will execute. First of all, you will perform the offline backup on the customer's source environment into the local storage. And afterwards, this backup and all the related files will have to be copied into the cloud storage. After that, the backup will be transferred by the SAP operations team into the HANA database of the target environment for your copy. Next, you as a partner will be able to run the software provisioning manager to trigger the restore as part of the execution and also run all the post-processing activities. And now let's have a look at the steps required to perform the system copy from the point of view of the basis consultant that will be in charge of the system copy. First, the basis consultant in charge of the conversion will connect to the migration server and copy there all the SAP tools needed for the procedure, paying attention to use the correct version, also in alignment with the kernel release used to prepare the target skeleton or empty system by our SAP Cloud Operations team. As step number 2, after the offline backup is completed in the source, the consultant will then transfer all the files related to the backup to the target storage or migration server using, for example, FTP or SCP. These files will then be moved by the SAP operations team into the HANA server, ready for the restore. As step number 3, the basis consultant can then start the software provisioning manager in the target migration server and perform all the activities for the system copy, including the restore of the backup on the HANA server. On step number 4, once the system copy is completed, the consultant will have to stop all the SAP processes on the migration server and trigger the SAP operations team to start the final primary application server instance that has been previously installed as part of the provisioning of the empty skeleton system. And finally, on step number 5, when the final instance is up and running, all the post-system copy activities can then be performed by connecting via SAP GUI to the final instance. And finally, after completing all the post activities, the SAP team will take over again to finalize all the post-processing required to successfully start operating the copied system. When moving an existing S4HANA on-premise system into the Cloud Private Edition, there are two possible cases. The version to be moved is recent enough to have more than 9 months of remaining mainstream maintenance. In this case, no further limitations apply. Or on the other hand, in case the version to be moved has less than 9 months of remaining mainstream maintenance or is already out of maintenance, the new limited maintenance policy applies. The limited maintenance policy basically affects the migration of the productive instance of a nearly to be or already out of maintenance S4HANA system by mandating to have 2 productive go-lives once the productive instance is migrated in the Cloud Private Edition. The first go-live will have to be in the original version and will only cover the migration to the cloud, lift and shift, whereas the second go-live will be for the upgraded productive instance. These 2 go-lives can be spaced by at most 2 weeks. Please note that also the productive dry run will need to be split in two. The first one testing that the migration in the original version works as expected, and the second one to test the upgrade procedure. As you can see from the example timeline in the slide, the policy only mandates the maximum 2-week gap for the productive go-lives and does not affect the rest of the project timeline. Therefore, all the required time can be spent with the migration and upgrade of the development and quality environments and their testing, and also with all the necessary migration and conversion dry runs of the productive environment, together with its required testing. Here you have a few important questions and answers regarding the limited maintenance policy. Right now, at the time of recording this session, the threshold version for which the limited maintenance policy becomes effective is 1610 or older. After March 2022, the next version to be covered by the policy will be 1709. Please also note that this approach does not grant you customers a maintenance extension to out-of-maintenance versions. The productive system will get back into mainstream maintenance only after the upgrade to the final version. The additional considerations for the system copy scenario are, first of all, regarding the add-ons that are installed in the source S4HANA system before the copy. They need to be supported or at least tolerated in the S4HANA Cloud Private Edition, and this will be checked by the operations team after the copy. All the required pre-activities for the system copy will need to be executed according to the guide in the source system before the offline backup by the partner. This is something that we will not be able to check in the target, and that's why we recommend you to pay attention to this point. All the post-system copy activities that do not require the operating system and database direct access, as per the guide, will need to be performed in the target environment after the switch into the final primary application server. The other activities requiring operating system and database access will be executed by the SAP operations team that are included in the service. The SAP operations team will also perform the additional activities after the completion of all system copy activities, and this will allow the final handover to the customer. And finally, the last 2 points. It is worth mentioning that both in case of system conversion and system copy, the target tenant on the destination HANA database must be the pre-installed and provided one. It is thus forbidden to create a new target tenant. Assisted migration services, or at any rate support from the SAP team, is needed when moving certain kind of systems into the private cloud, such as systems with SAP ASE as target database, SAP NetWeaver Java systems, SAP content servers, or business object systems. In addition to this mandatory training for transition services you are now attending, be it for sell or service authorization or the overview or detail, we have a recommended one to go even deeper. The course is called 10 Steps to S4 for Private Cloud Edition, and it is a Delta training based on the basic version of this very popular hands-on training. By participating, you can try to execute a complete conversion to private cloud with a hands-on approach. This can be booked using the Partner Benefits catalog, where you can already find all upcoming sessions. We are now at the end, and this concludes the session. I hope the previous content clarified the detailed procedure required for a system conversion or system copy to S4HANA Cloud Private Edition and your role as a partner in these activities. Thank you for attending the session, and bye-bye.